General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Broadcasting live on WNN 1470 AM, 95.3 FM, iHeartRadio, and the World Wide Web. This is Make America Think Again with your Google Blacklisted host, Tom Trento.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
All right, Tom Trento here on January 3rd, Friday. Unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special presentation of the Trento Show. You may have heard what's happened in the Middle East with the killing of one of Iran's number one human beings, an individual that is more popular, more deadly, more lethal, was more popular, more deadly, and more lethal than even Khomeini, the original Khomeini. So what we're going to do, let me lay the groundwork here so you understand. So our audience understands 4 or 5 minutes after 11 o'clock, WNN 1470, 95.3, Tom Trento, your host, J. Mark in the studio. We have on the line with us Clare Lopez. Many of you know Clare, working at Center for Security Policy, the Vice President of Research and Analysis, retired Central Intelligence Agency expert on Iran. And we also have a report coming in from Damon Rosen in Israel. But let me set the stage. When we left the studio yesterday, Thursday, the 2nd of January, we taped today's show so that we, the United West team, can be at the rally this evening in Miami with President Trump, the launch of his evangelical movement. As many of you know, for the past year, we've been mobilizing evangelicals to vote in the state of Florida. What's that?
Nothing.
We've been mobilizing evangelicals to vote in the state of Florida, and then out of nowhere comes the Christianity Today controversy, telling Christians not to vote for President Trump. He's too immoral. And as a result, out of nowhere comes a launch of the national evangelical movement to stand behind President Trump, and it happens to be in our backyard in Miami. So we're on our way to Miami today, January 3rd, and we'll be reporting, possibly live streaming, so stay in touch from there. But the show we had planned for yesterday, which is a great show, we went through the Declaration of Independence line by line, laid the precedent for this 2020 year to show the dichotomy between the Democrat Marxist Socialist left and their view of America in light of Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, and the Republican view in terms of the platform positions. And then we contrasted the existing Democrat view with the Declaration of Independence and said, you as an intelligent voter, looking at this document, how would you vote on November 3rd, 2020? It's a great show. We're going to play it next Wednesday. That's when we're going to play that show. But overnight, who the heck knew that...
it's Jumpin' Juma Freaky
Friday. Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday. We're back on Jumping Juma.
Do you want me to play the little hit of the song?
No. We got too much to cover today. But so...
I'll play it at the close.
We'll
close with it.
We'll close with our Jumpin' Juma thing. But today we want to bring you, like no one else can. I can say quite confidently, with our capabilities through the years and our resources, like two individuals that are with us on the line. I think we're going to bring Mary in later on too somehow. Right. We'll figure that out.
What's with our high-tech productions we got?
We can make sense out of this. And if you watched Fox this morning, and we're taping this just about an hour before we originally, which will be on the air. It's about 10 o'clock now, and we'll be on the air in 11. So this is fresh information. If you watched any of the news outlets, I watched all of them. I was on Al Jazeera all morning. That's a great place to learn about what's going on. But you saw Geraldo Rivera and Brian Kilmeade just having a battle. And to set the stage for our guests, our experts, the issue was Geraldo is completely opposed to this as a strategy. And he said basically that we have been in a war methodology of swatting bees flying around, and we swat them. And we've been doing it very successfully. Now we've killed the queen bee, and the whole nest is out there carrying the metaphor, and I'm opposed to this. And then Brian Kilmeade's trying to say, well, wait a minute, this guy has blood on his hands, but it was also preemptive because there was intelligence that there was going to be subsequent attacks by Qassam Soleimani, who was in Baghdad, by the way, and they had a big battle over that. Well, we're going to make sense out of all of this, and then I'm going to take you to the Trento War College as we ask Clare Lopez some questions in a little bit. But
hold on a second.
Right now,
keep going.
But right now, let's check out. My voice has gone distant, and Clare Lopez can barely hear me. So if you were in our studios, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Trento, your host, J. Mark in the studio. Duct Tape Productions, that's us. We're taping with equipment that wasn't designed for taping, so we want you to bear with us on all of that. And make a donation. Go to our website, theunitedwest.org, and generously donate at the beginning of this year so that we can get some new equipment and make this work. Clare, can you hear me now? You should be able to hear me now very clearly.
Yeah, that's better now.
Okay, great. If you were in the studio, you'd be laughing your head off seeing how we're wiring everything to make this work. Clare is up north from Florida, and Damon is way out to the east in the Jerusalem area in Israel. So let me lay out a little bit more groundwork. Actually, Clare, why don't you set the stage? Last Friday, we had a show that was very well received by many people, where we addressed the attacks against where the United States killed some of the Iranian forces that were shooting missiles, and we discussed Soleimani. We talked about him specifically. Well, the guy didn't make it through a week. For our audience, sketch the situation that existed about a week ago in Iraq. Soleimani, who he is, what he was doing in Iraq yesterday, and then we'll go through this piece by piece. Our objective is for the audience to understand we do not want you to miss this.
Right.
We either have to fight this battle now, or our children will fight it later. Let me modify that. Our children are going to fight this battle later. Yes. If we fight it properly now, we'll make it easier for the next generation to fight it, because when we go later to Trento War College, we're going to show you logically why we are in a protracted war, not only with Islam, not only with Iraq, with Iran, but with the military doctrine of Islam worldwide. So, Clare, get us up to speed on the historic context of the last week.
Sure. So, Major General Qasem Soleimani was the commander of the Quds force since 1998. Quds force is supposed to be a division of the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but really it is more independent, and particularly so had become that way under the leadership of Qassam Solemeini. He was in charge of all of Iran's external terror liaisons, if you will. He was the one who worked with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with Al-Qaeda, with the Taliban, with the Houthis in Yemen, and in Iraq. He set up a whole network of Shiite terror militias. Some of them had existed since back in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, when we'll remember our troops and coalition partner troops were all killed, maimed, torn up by explosive devices being set off by these very Shiite militias, but given to them, those explosives provided to them by Iran. That was Qassam Soleimani.
Clare, hang on one second. Let me add one other important element. In 1980, right after the revolution, remember the revolution where the Shah was overthrown, 1979, and Ayatollah Khomeini took over. Well, immediately Saddam Hussein launched an invasion of Iran, and that was the Iran-Iraq war for, I think it was from 1980 to 88. It was a long war, almost a decade. Soleimani, the individual we're talking about, the guy that was wasted last night, he was a young guy, 20, 21, 22 years old, and he became an outstanding leader in a unique division, the Saral division.
A hero.
A hero of all of that. So this guy's bona fides go back to 1980. How many years is that? Almost 40 years. And how is he viewed? I want you to continue, Claire, but give the listener a sense of how this guy is viewed. What comparatively
to Saddam Hussein?
What is the level of importance to the Iranians for Soleimani in light of someone from the United States? What kind of comparison would you make?
To Bin Laden.
You're
To Bin Laden.
absolutely right that
the United States.
As a young man, he joined the Khomeini Revolution and the newly formed IRGC right after the revolution, 1980, and rose through the ranks during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. Continued to rise until, as I said, he became commander of the Quds force in 1998. But over this time and up until recently, he has almost developed a cult of personality, you might say, among Iranian regime leadership and those terror proxy militias all around the region and the world. He was a strategist, very sophisticated, and he became revered. I mean, I've often thought that even were the mullahs somehow, someday to be overthrown in Iran, we would still be facing the guns, the thugs of the IRGC, the Quds force, and so forth. And this guy, Qassam Soleimani, would have been among the top leadership of whatever succeeded.
Yeah, but comparatively,
minus Soleimani now.
Comparatively, what American figure would it be similar to if someone killed? Would it be the vice president? Would it be the head of the CIA? I mean, give the folks the level of importance in relationship to someone in the U.S.
I hesitate to compare this thug, this terrorist murderer, to an American in any way. But he was a very high-ranking military official. I don't know, maybe something like commander of one of our armed forces, or the top leadership of the Pentagon, something like that.
Like a patent.
I mean, they are going nuts in Iran right now as we speak. Tens of thousands. They're in mourning. They're beating themselves. This guy, really, in many respects, because they're so militaristic, Iran. This guy was more important than Khomeini as the religious leader. Because there's a sense of militarism in the Iranians. All right, keep going to give us the context.
Well, I want to clarify. Comparing to like Osama bin Laden, how would he be compared to Osama bin Laden?
Well, certainly at that level of importance, or taking Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, he was at that level. He would have been one of the very senior leadership figures of the Iranian regime, even were the mullahs no longer there.
Okay,
and that's how powerful he was.
All right. So how do we get from last week to today?
Subordinate administratively to the IRGC and to Brigadier General Hossein Salami, he stood alone. He stood alone in, like I said, almost a cult of personality, you might say.
Okay. So how do we get from last week to today?
So with these terror militias all over Iraq that Soleimani helped to set up, or at least to command and to direct. They'd been launching attacks against bases all over Iraq where they knew perfectly well that American troops were positioned. And it could have happened at any time, but what finally did happen a week ago is that in one of those strikes up near Kirkuk in the northern part of Iraq, an American citizen contractor was killed, 4 American troops were injured. And that set off this sequence of events that led up to where we are now. And so what President Trump did in the aftermath of that attack and the killing of our Americans was to order strikes, 5 different strikes against the forces of the militia named as responsible, that is the Kataib Hezbollah. 3 of their bases in Iraq were hit, 2 in Syria were hit. And many of their own militia members, plus Iranians who are there advising them and, operationally with them, were killed. a couple of dozen or more were killed and others injured. That in turn set off the attack, the assault on our embassy in Baghdad, which we have to point out sits within the very heavily fortified green zone within Baghdad, and that green zone was penetrated. The gates somehow got opened that this mob of attackers could get through. Now, they did not have weapons. They weren't carrying RPGs or AK-47s or anything like that, but they caused a great deal of mayhem and damage. They set fires. They were throwing Molotov cocktails, damaging, breaking the outer entryway of our embassy in Baghdad. And finally were dispersed because of the very prompt, very resolute, firm response by President Trump, who sent in the Marines. And he sent Apache gunships overhead to disperse the crowd with flares. The defenders of the embassy also used tear gas and rubber bullets. Eventually, the crowd dispersed. But while that siege, and it was a siege, an assault and a siege on our embassy took place, our people, our diplomats on the inside were, in danger of their lives. If that crowd had gotten through, they could have, there could have been even more serious consequences than the damage done. So in response to that, and also it seems intelligence received by President Trump and our senior levels of national security, intelligence that these militias, Kataib Hezbollah in particular, and under the command of Qassam Soleimani, the Quds force, were planning more attacks against American bases, American positions in Iraq. With that and all the sequence that led up to it, President Trump finally gave the order to attack, to get rid of Qassam Soleimani, and last night that was done, along with, I should say, the commander of that Kataib Hezbollah militia, who goes by the rather pretentious, I might say, nom de guerre, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis.
Yeah, his name is Jamal Jafar Mohammed Ali Ibrahimi, but he goes by that name, Abu, the son of Mahdi al-Muhandis.
No, the father of.
The father of Mahdi al-Muhandis, which is what, the engineer, something like that?
Right, but to take the name, the father of the Mahdi, of course, is the messianic figure for Muslims in Islam that, ushers in the end times, day of judgment, all of that. For Shiites, that would be the 12th Imam. And so they're calling him the father of the Mahdi.
That is amazing. A little bit on him. He was born in Iraq, but his mother was Iranian, and basically he flipped sides, went over to Iran, and had been going back and forth, and then hooked up with Soleimani to lead what? What was Abu Mahdi's role in Iraq?
Well, as we've said, he was the founder and the leader of one of these Shiite militias called Kataib Hezbollah. This is not the same Hezbollah as the one in Lebanon, but it's modeled after it. It's the same kind of militia, only in Iraq. And also, like the Hezbollah in Lebanon, under the command and control of the Quds force, with the chain of command really going straight up to the supreme leader in Tehran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So this guy led one of those militias. There are many of them, at least a dozen or more. Others include the Badr Corps, the Mahdi Army. There are a whole bunch of them. But this is the model that Iran has followed across the region, setting up and commanding these terror militias. You can see it with Hamas. You can see it with Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. We can see it with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi tribal rebels in Yemen, and here in Iraq, you've got this model played out as well with these many terror Shiite militias, which allow Iran to act attack Americans, attack others, with, some layer of sort of kind of plausible deniability, although everybody knows. Now, nominally, these terror militias, they're sometimes called Hashd Shabi in Arabic, or the Popular Mobilization Units, PMUs sometimes called, or Popular Mobilization Forces, different names. But nominally, they were placed under the administrative authority of the Iraqi army last year, 2019. But in point of fact, they were still commanded by Iran through the Quds force and Qassam Soleimani.
Yeah, now, folks, this is amazing. This is Tom Trento, your host. I have Clare Lopez on, and you're familiar if you've been listening to our show here at the United West. You're familiar with Clare. This is a special edition on Friday, January 3rd, to make some sense out of this mess and to provide some information for you as to what may happen next and what we as Americans need to be prepared for. But understand, we have a huge embassy, a multi-billion-dollar operation in Baghdad. That's its own city, essentially, with thousands of people working there. Now, the State Department's telling people to leave, which is a little bit confusing, but it's a huge commitment, and this is a screwed-up country. You got the Shiites who hate the Sunnis battling, and the Abu Mahdi, who in and of himself, if he was the only guy taken out, it would be a disaster for the Islamic world, the Shia world. He was part of the Iraqi government. So now the Iraqis got to figure out, well, what are we going to do? So it's a mess right now. But let's see, Israel always gets blamed for something, somehow, some way. If it gets too hot in Tehran, well, the Israelis are messing with the climate. Let's go speak to, what does this mean? Let's go speak to Damon Rosen live. He's live right now, and we want him to stay alive over there. Damon, what is going on in Israel right now? What's the sense? What's the military situation? Get us up to date, please.
Oh, well, it happened overnight here, so, very late. The initial word was just that it was Mahdi. It didn't come out that it was Soleimani until after I was sleeping. So to wake up and see all the headlines was fantastic. You got to realize this is a guy that Israel's been wanting to assassinate for years. Obama adamantly opposed Israel doing this about 4 or 5 years ago. He is, Claire explained who the guy is, but this is the guy who was in charge of exporting the revolution. This is the guy who has turned the Middle East upside down and is responsible for a lot of the sectarian violence, Sunni Shia violence. So this guy was, you talk about a top scalp to nail to the wall. Well, he doesn't have a scalp left, but as far as importance, it's amazing. Now, like you said, they always look to blame Israel, of course, even though the United States came out and said it was their operation. Iran is also blaming Israel for being involved with the operation. Now, did Israel have any assist with any intelligence? Possibly, but there's certainly, it's certainly not out there for public consumption, but Iran's, go-to move is to blame Israel as usual. So militarily here, we are on very high alert. I know soldiers that were originally scheduled to have the weekend off have been called up. Up north, we're on super high alert. There's talk of opening the bomb shelters just as a precautionary measure because a lot of these militias that Claire just mentioned, they're operating right on the border of the Golan Heights. When you guys were here, you were within a binocular shot of them when you went up to Mount Ben Tal.
Yep. Now, for our audience, this is Tom Trento, special edition, WNN 1470, 95.3, special edition today, Friday, January 3rd. What a way to start 2020, Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday. We have Damon Rosen, who worked with us for many years here in the United States, now lives in Israel, giving a report on what's going on. Damon, it's Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday there, and what is it? Morning prayers are over. I mean, are the Hamas people in Gaza, was there any trouble over there? Usually they protest on Fridays.
Nothing has happened yet, but Hamas has talked about revenge. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Nasrallah came out promising revenge. But interestingly, the Lebanese foreign minister came out and said that Lebanon doesn't want to get involved with this. But Nasrallah, you got to realize, Hezbollah and their allies are in the biggest bloc in the Lebanese parliament, and Lebanon's totally falling apart. Hezbollah is stronger than the Lebanese National Army. So I mean, it's just such a mess over
It's a
here.
mess. It's a mess. And
I'm sure you saw Vice President Pence tweeted out video of Iraqis celebrating in the streets, because you have to realize with the protests that have been going on in Iraq, a lot of it had to do with not just the corruption, but the Iranian influence in Iraq. And over 400, 500 people have been mowed down by these militias, these same militias that are under Soleimani and Mahdi's control.
Yeah.
So it's not, the Iraqi government is talking about, it was, a violation of our sovereignty, and this and that, but the actual people of Iraq were pretty happy.
Yeah, there's and for our
also, I want to bring up that this has been brewing not just, obviously since '79, but let's remember that these are the same individuals behind the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 Marines.
Well, if we
the embassy in Beirut,
if we go through, hang on one second, Damon. If we go through the lethality list for Soleimani, it's absurd. He's had his hands in everything. He's a hardened combat warrior. He's been injured in combat. He's killed many people. The Department of Defense lists him killing and his forces 600 people plus. He was the guy who organized the IED attacks against our troops in Iraq, but came up with the explosively formed penetrator. That bomb that when it exploded, the metal conformed to a spear essentially, and was able, because of the pressure and the heat and the force, to go through some of our most hardened equipment and killed a lot of Americans. This is the guy responsible for that. So, it's good he's dead. But Claire, have we opened, as Geraldo Rivera said, have we now smashed the bee's nest? We killed the queen bee, and now we don't know what's going to happen, and we're way over our heads.
Well, we're not way over our heads because Donald J. Trump is president. That's number one. Number two, yes, I do expect that there will be some retaliation coming from Iran after this 3-day period of mourning is over that the Supreme Leader has called for themselves, their face, their honor, whatever you want to call it. They're going to have to follow through on some kind of retaliation, and that's why the heightened state of alert all over the place. But this had to happen, and you were saying before, Tom, better we face it now than, let's say, after Iran deploys its nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Better now, get through this now, and certainly without Soleimani, the Iranian regime is now without one of its senior strategists, one of its most senior and most accomplished, in quotes, of course, strategists for the policy of revolution export.
Exporting the revolution.
That's what he was in charge of.
Hey,
export
folks.
of the revolution, which, by the way, is commanded within their own constitution. the Iranian constitution online and in English, by the way. But they'll have to do it without him. And so this was a master move by Trump. It was a preemption for what lies ahead, for what yet must come.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, special edition on January 3rd, Friday, Jumpin' Juma Freaky. And it is a Freaky Friday. For those of you just tuning in, whether you're coming in your automobiles, your home, wherever you are, Tom Trento, your host of the Trento Show. As I said at the outset, we had a different show planned for today. We taped the show yesterday. That's a deconstruction of the Declaration of Independence, a fabulous show. You got to listen to it. We're going to play it next Wednesday. But we put that on the shelf in light of the developing situation in the Middle East, a one that some people say has apocalyptic consequences. You know, a lot of this stuff is often overstated. I wanna take us, Claire and Damon, and we have Clare Lopez, Damon Rosen on the line from Israel. I want to take us to the Trento War College, and you guys are my two students in the Trento War College. And Claire, I have a question for you, and this is a sort of a red team exercise for our audience to understand the gravity of the situation doctrinally that we are in right now. Miss Lopez, you're a pretty good student in the Trento War College. I have a question for you. If the United States was given by the world community the option to attack any country, any of the 200 countries with nuclear weapons and evaporate the country, just it doesn't exist anymore. And there was no retribution, no consequences. The whole world said, all right, the United States gets one shot. What country do you think the United States would just want to evaporate and not have it in existence anymore?
We would never do such a thing. We would never, ever do such a thing. That would be contrary to everything our founding fathers ever stood for, everything our foundational documents, ever laid out against who we are as a people. Now, that said...
Wait, hang on. Mr. Rosen, you're a pretty good student. Sometimes you're a little late. Sometimes you're making noise. Sometimes you're shooting the girls with spitballs.
I know.
But
doing your dishes or something like that. I don't know.
I want Claire to finish.
No. We're at the Trento.
Right, let me finish that then. What I'll say is
hang on. I'm going to come back to you.
Concept.
I'm going to come back to you, Claire.
Claire. Hold on. We'll get back.
In international law since the 1600s and Google rodeo.
I'm going to come back to you.
Anticipatory self-defense would include a strike like this one against Qassam Soleimani for the state of Israel, for example.
Wait, hang on, Claire.
Yes, what?
You're at the Trento War College. Hang on, I'm going to come back to you. I have to go to the next student, Mr. Rosen, who is Mr. Rosen, if the same offer was made by the world community to the country of Iran, and Iran was given one opportunity to evaporate any country on the face of the earth and no repercussions, no consequences, what do you think Iran's decision would be?
Well, that's very, very tight between the United States and Israel. You know, it's part of me says they would like to take Israel out more, and the other part of me says they'd like to take the United States out more. If they took the United States out, they would view taking Israel out as much easier. So I'd go with the United States.
Oh, wait, hang on. Miss, your colleague, Miss Lopez said that
I look more powerful than Israel.
Your colleague, Miss Lopez, said that it would be inconceivable for the United States to do such an action, even if there was no moral or political or sociological consequences. But when I asked you the question, you didn't hesitate on the moral issue. You said Iran would.
What was the question?
Because Iran has no morals. Iran wants that.
Yeah, but Tom, was the question, would the United States do this?
Yeah, that was the question to you.
Would Iran do this?
No. The question was, would the United States do this? And you said no. And I asked our fellow living in Israel, and he was struggling between whether or not Iran. But here's for our audience. Here's the lesson from the Trento War College.
I would like to bring a little comment on this.
All right, go ahead.
But he answered the question, what country would Iran
That's right.
take out?
That's correct.
I answered the question, what would the United States.
Right,
Correct.
right.
I
Yeah,
got
I'm
the
going
easy
somewhere.
question,
Hold on.
Claire, because you're the smart one.
I'm going somewhere with this.
And
I'm going somewhere with this. Go ahead, Mark.
And your monkey students here that are not paying attention to you
Yeah, I
in class
know.
is, me included, is all right. Here's my qualification to that answer. Okay, with Damon's question, where you said, what would Iran do? Okay, if all the Jews in Israel were to be transported magically to Madagascar, okay, the country Iran would want to wipe out is Madagascar.
Well, you're confusing my. I understand that, but let's stick with, for the sake of the audience, I'm simplifying this, and I'm
Well, it's pretty simple. They
underscoring.
want to kill Jews.
I'm
That's it.
underscoring my.
No, they also need to take back land that was ever occupied or
Yeah.
conquered by Islam. And in that sense, the land of the Jewish state of Israel must be
But here's the point.
reconquered.
Here's the
according
point.
to Islamic.
At the outset of this, I said that, ladies and gentlemen, this is an explosive situation. Either we fight it now or our kids are going to fight it.
Right.
And then I qualified that by saying, our kids are going to fight it. We can make it easier for them if we fight it now. And that's precipitated upon the doctrine of Islam as articulated in the Constitution of Iran and as believed and followed by the Iranians, that Damon didn't hesitate on any moral or political issue if they had no culpability. He said, well, either the United States or Israel. So the point is, we are now in a historic time period where the Dar al-Harb, the state of war on Islam, particularly on the Shia side right now, is perpetuated forever. I don't see a way in which Iran is going to say, you know what, we're done with all of this. We want to be a Western country, all of that. And maybe we have to adopt in the West the Israeli doctrine of suppressing the enemy, walling off the enemy, defeating them militarily until they push back. But Iran is never going to give up.
Right.
And now the Sunnis, Claire, are the Sunnis going to forget about their differences as to who Mohammed gave the authority to? Are they going to forget about that and join the Shia against the United States now?
Well, they already have, and for a long time. And this is a very good point to make about Qassam Soleimani and the Quds force. Who was the number one backer supporter of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, a Sunni, in Iraq in those middle 2000s when all of those IEDs, VBIEDs, and EFPs were mangling our troops? That was the Quds force. That was Iran-backed Abu Musab al-Zarqawi.
Amazing.
Who formed the alliance with Al-Qaeda, Sunni Al-Qaeda, or incipient? It was just forming in 1990 in Khartoum. It was Iran and Hezbollah, the Shiites, who formed that terror alliance with Osama bin Laden in Khartoum in 1990 that led to everything through the 90s on up to 9/11. They've been working side by side for a long time. You have to look at these things in maybe layers. And at the ground
Look
level,
at Hamas.
they might be very happily tearing one another to shreds. But at the macro level, it is Dar al-Islam versus Dar al-Harb.
Yeah.
Hamas is the perfect example of that.
Uh-huh.
Which is, the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood that is fully backed by Iran. Why? Because Hamas is a thorn, a little bit more than a thorn in Israel's side, but because they fight Israel, they back up, even though it's a 100% Sunni organization.
Hey, both of you.
Arming, training, funding, backing Taliban in Afghanistan since before 9/11. Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah, has been in Afghanistan working with the Taliban since before 9/11 and to this day.
Hey, Claire and Damon, the headline on CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations, Washington, D.C., the main organ for the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. If you go to their homepage right now, their breaking news story, I'm going to read it to you, is Donate to CARE to assist in the legal defense of the Muslim community and the civil rights for all Americans against Laura Loomer.
I saw
right?
that.
That's their headline.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sooner
Oh,
or
that's
later,
funny.
sometime today, they're going to have to come out with
Yeah, I know.
with a statement. Now, Ilhan Omar came out with a statement.
That's probably got to be good for Laura's fundraising.
I know.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Ilhan Omar tweeted out, so what if Trump wants war? Knows this leads to war, and he needs the distraction. Real question is, will those with congressional authority step in and stop him?
Right.
I know I will. Ilhan Omar.
You know what? This is a perfect example of what I've been saying for years. And this whole scenario is, don't do anything wrong and make him mad. We are in a abused relationship. We are in an abusive relationship with Islam, where we are the abused victim and they are the abusing spouse. And no matter how much you try to please an abusing spouse, you're still going to get abused. And the abuse keeps coming and coming. Well, don't do anything. I can't do that. It'll make him mad. If I say that, it's going to make him mad. If I do this, it's going to make him mad. No, you need to stand up for yourself and say, no, I'm not taking this abuse anymore. I'm done with it. I'm done with it. If you hit me, I'll take you to the cops. You take you to the cops. You still hit me, I'll hit you with a baseball bat. And then, you know what? Eventually, you're going to make me use a shotgun. Okay? Because I'm tired. I'm not taking this abuse anymore. I'm tired of this abusive relationship with Islam. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it.
All right. Well, we'll see if Donald Trump is tired. Well, and the issue is going to be whether or not right now, Damon, I don't know if you're aware, here in the United States, virtually all the Democrat candidates running have come out and condemn this. They go, oh, he was a very dangerous guy, but Trump has now unleashed holy hell. Trump has now created. Biden said Trump threw a stick of dynamite into Tinder.
Don't make him mad. Don't
This
make
is
him
the
mad.
argument against that. Right now, and for the last 10, 15 years, their nuclear program has been operating under the protection of an umbrella of terror. Okay, they use these threats of terrorism to keep their nuclear program going, even despite that idiotic deal that didn't do anything. Would we rather deal with terrorists now before they get the bomb, or would we rather have their terrorism operate under the protection of a nuclear umbrella? In which case, we could never fight them because it would certainly be, tens of millions
Apocalyptic.
of
It would be
Americans dead.
apocalyptic. No, Claire,
So
do you agree? I mean,
you have to deal with it now, or you're going to be dealing with something where it gets to the point where it can't be dealt with.
you agree with that, Claire?
So,
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning of the show. You'll remember. We either take this on now, or we face a nuclear-capable Iran after it deploys its nuclear weapons. I think President Trump has made very clear where he stands. And let me go to the U.S. Public and the political arena here. I think that those Democratic candidates who've spoken up against the president on this are going to find themselves absolutely marginalized by the American people, who are going to understand very clearly what our president has done, and they will cheer him.
Well, we are planning here with Willie G. You guys know Willie G. And we're planning, it looks like Sunday afternoon, the president is leaving Mar-a-Lago, going to Palm Beach, and he has a motorcade. We're planning a rally in support of this decision. And look, if people have been following the United West, Clare Lopez, Damon, Mark, myself, and many others, nobody wants war, but we're wise enough to know when somebody else wants war and you don't respond, you get more war than if you engage at a certain point. Problem is, from even George Bush's time through, what's the guy's name, Barack Obama, through his time, he would not allow our warfighters to fight in a way in which victory was assured. The rules of engagement, and we know all too sadly how many Americans were killed because of the absurd rules of engagement. Donald Trump gets in, releases the warfighters to fight, and within 2 years, the Islamic State has been devastated. Now, it's a political year. This is the level of of intrigue on what's going to happen next, and the level of fear as to what may happen next is just over the top. What a way to begin a new year. I'm going to have to let you guys go in a minute here. Damon, any closing thoughts on what's going on in Israel and what we here in America can do to help you guys?
What could America possibly do more than Donald Trump has done for this country? Please.
All right, good point, Claire.
Listen, this was a gift from America to Israel. I don't think that they did it, because of that. But you have to realize how strategically huge this was for Israel. This is the guy who responsible for all those missiles that came across the Golan Heights when you guys were here in May of last year, when you were staying on the Sea of Galilee. This is the guy who ordered that.
And if it wasn't for the
fighting Israel in 2006 in our last war with Hezbollah, he was physically fighting in southern Lebanon.
He's an absolute terrorist murderer.
If it wasn't for the Israeli defensive forces, the Iron Dome and all of that, the building we were in could have been hit because Tiberias was in fact targeted. All right, Damon, thank you. We will stay on this. Anything breaking, let us know. We'll do a special live stream or something. Claire, your concluding thoughts to our listeners today, Friday, January 3rd on
Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday.
On Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday.
Yeah, I'll just say on behalf of all those kids that some of us used to go visit at Bethesda Naval Hospital with their arms and legs blown off, with all the survivors, the victims of 9/11, all of them, on behalf of all of them, this is finally retribution. It is just retribution by President Trump against one of the top guys who orchestrated all of that. And there's more to come. We'll be ready for it because we've got Donald Trump as president.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Claire and Damon, Rosen. We'll see you guys, and I'm sure we'll be in touch next week to follow up. Hey, Tom Trento here, your host, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
J. Mark in the control room. We have a few minutes left, but we have one more caller, I think, coming in. We have our own Mary up a little further north in Florida who wants to weigh in on some of this. Let me get everybody up to date. We've got a few minutes left in the show today, Friday, January 3rd. We call it Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday. Historically, that's what we do. No one knew that last night, Thursday, U.S. time, it was Friday, Middle Eastern time, Iraqi time. At this point, the reporting is that an American drone, and obviously the intelligence identified Qassam Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Republican Guard, IRGC, and hit him, knocked him out, knocked out Abu Mahdi, the engineer, who is an Iraqi-born, flipped over to the Iranian side, a member of the Iraqi, can you follow this? Iraqi government, but the right-hand man to Soleimani to kill Americans. Unbelievable. We're making sense out of it. We have Mary on the line. Mary, what do you make out of all this mess?
Well, it's pretty crazy, and I think Trump did exactly the right thing to stand for America, stand for women, stand for against this the terrorist regime.
Right. It's amazing. This whole thing is just completely gratifying for all the victims that this guy has terrorized in his past, who is wounded, who he is maimed, and everything else. And Mary, me and you were talking earlier about this relationship we're with Islam. Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, the whole concept of Islam is against women, and what they have done in Iran with the Quds force, the IRGC, where they have gone after the women that have protested against the Sharia compliant hijab and burqa and just suppressing women and the beatings that women have taken over there, and there is nothing that protects them over there. This whole regime needs to be shut down and taken out, and I think Trump is taking the first step to do it. As a woman, I've always said, you hit me once, that's going to be the last time you ever hit me. And these women are standing up against it over there, and I think we need to support that.
Well, I even took one step further and I said, we are in an abusive relationship with Islam. We are the abused spouse of this relationship we have with Islam. We're letting this spousal abuse happen over and over again. When are we going to stand up? When are we going to stand up and say, no more, no more, no more abuse from this tyrannical, terrorist, designated terrorist entity?
Now there are multiple layers of reasons why Qassam Soleimani, his death is good for the free world, the Western world, and as both of you guys are saying, for those Muslims who simply don't want to follow the Sharia in the way in which Iran practices it, which is the domineering of women, the abuse of women, all of that. Now, the State Department, Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, he's saying, yeah, there's good reasons in the past why he's dead, but this was a preventative, a preemptive killing of Soleimani because there is intelligence, there is information that he was going to perpetrate further attacks against Americans, both in Iraq and in other areas. Now, when that was mentioned to Geraldo Rivera earlier this morning on Fox and Friends, what do you think, Mary, what do you think Geraldo's response was?
Oh, I'm sure he was playing into it quite nicely for the Iranians and trying to go against Trump. I'm sure his response was more the submissive type.
Yeah, he's actually a friend of Donald Trump, and many times he just says great stuff about him. And then he's schizophrenic because I think he thinks he has to be a contrarian, a liberal conservative, whatever. He's going, oh yeah, our intelligence agencies, okay, oh yeah, look what they did in Iraq, right. Look what they did here. He starts disparaging the intelligence agencies and calling into question whether or not Soleimani. And the answer to that is very simple. What is Qassam Soleimani, the head of Iranian military forces? What is he doing in Baghdad?
Right.
I mean, Mary, why is the guy in Baghdad?
Tom, there was an article Robert Spencer wrote back in July of 2018 that had a quote straight from Soleimani that said, "Know that we are near you in places that don't come to your mind. We are near you in places you can't even imagine. We are a nation of martyrdom. You know that a war would mean the loss of your capabilities. You may start the war, but we will be the ones to determine its end." That's an outright threat against the United States, against President Donald Trump.
Right.
Yeah, and that's du jour. That's the threat of the day: death to America, mort to America. But he's right. We know, there's no question, that there's Hezbollah cells in the United States. They came from Tehran to Caracas, Venezuela. They dress up as Mexicans. They come up the border. We know all of this. I mean, it sounds crazy, but we know it. They're here. The question is, are they going to activate? Are they going to go kinetic? This is a big question. Now, on this global chess game, being played out in the Middle East and the United States, the Muslim world, Muslim community has to start, and we'll continue this on Monday. We're going to have a lot of stuff. They got to start thinking, okay, if we ignite something in Manhattan or San Francisco, it's going to get traced back to us. Then what's going to happen? Is Trump a nutcase? Is he going to bomb us, or is this impeachment? We got to get the Democrats on our side. And Mary, just quickly, we're coming to the close of the show here. What has been your response? And Mary, for the sake of the listening audience, she heads up our Sharia Crime Stoppers webcast every Tuesday evening. When do you start that up again?
We start that back up on the 13th with Clare Lopez being our Monday night news story. And then on the 14th, we'll be that's our Tuesday event, and that's going to be with Robert Spencer.
All right, that's Sharia Crime Stoppers. You can go to theunitedwest.org and get all that information. Just quickly, Mary, your thoughts on the Democrat candidates essentially siding with the Iranian viewpoint.
Essentially, they are.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I don't understand it. There's no logic to it in terms of understanding who this IRGC is and the Iranians, the abuses that they do on a daily basis, hourly basis, and the people they have in prison for just standing up for freedoms. I don't understand where this Democrat Party, and it's not Democratic, it's Democrat.
That's
I wish
right.
they'd get the nomenclature correct on this in the media, but they won't. But it's just incredible that these Democrats stand with a nation that is out to destroy rather than give freedoms.
Thank you, Danita.
All right. Thank you very much, Mary. All right, Mary, we'll see you on Monday. You take care. Mark, we got about a minute left. Your concluding thoughts.
Thanks, Tom.
All right,
Yep.
take it easy, Mary.
When are we tired of being abused? When are we tired? When do we stand up and say no more? That's all I have to say, because how would you advise a woman who's being abused by a spouse? How would you advise her? What would you tell her to do? And then relate that to Islam. That's what I say.
Yeah, that's a great way of understanding this, ladies and gentlemen. Bottom line, Tom Trento, your host here, WNN 1470, special edition. This is a special edition of our show, The Trento Show, on January 3rd, Friday, Jumping Juma Freaky Friday. And man, is it a Jumping Juma Friday? Now, full disclosure, we taped this show about an hour earlier than we go on the air, because we are on our way to the evangelical Trump rally in Miami. We have press passes. We got to get there early. On Monday, we'll report back from the evangelical rally. Now, the president is supposed to be there today, Friday the 3rd. I don't think that's going to happen in light of this crisis that's going on right now. In any event, we thank you for tuning in. It's an interesting start to a new year. This station, this show is where you're going to get phenomenal information about all this crazy stuff so that you can think and vote intelligently on November 3rd, 2020. We'll see you on Monday.